I'd like to go into a big part of what the seminar has been building towards, which is a book launch of a book titled The African Energy Sector, Impact of Transitions and Climate Change on Future Developments. And with that, I'd like to call up Ms. Wairimu Karanya. She is the founder and lead consultant at Wairimu & Co., which provides legal, investment, and policy advice in corporate law, energy and natural resources, and trade matters across Eastern Africa, to speak about this book and to address contributors for the book. Ms. Wairimu Karanya, are you with us?
Yes, I am, and I hope that you can hear me, Zach, and all the participants.
Yes, we can. Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Zach, as we say in Kiswahili, asante sana. This has been a very illuminating conference, and many thanks to IME, to the Extractives Hub, and to all the speakers. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my great pleasure to welcome you to the official book launch of the current leading publication, I would say, relating to the African energy sector. The title of the book is The African Energy Sector, the Impact of Energy Transitions and Climate Change on Future Developments. This book is a product of the African Energy and Mineral Management Initiative, or IME, led by Dr. Victoria Nalule. And there are 20 or so chapters. I can certainly count 20 contributions from diverse contributors, which will be highlighted in this section. I'm very pleased to say that we have a powerhouse of an editorial team consisting of Dr. Victoria Nalule, Mr. Tom Rukundo Ayabare, and Noreen Kidunduhu from Kenya, Tom Rukundo from Uganda, and of course Victoria Nalule from the Extractives Hub. And we will be hearing briefly from the editorial team and from the contributing authors of this great work. Now, to start us off, I'm going to call upon Ms. Noreen Kidunduhu, if you are here with us, to share a bit more about yourself and about your experience in editing the book and any further remarks that you may have. Noreen, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Wairimu. My name is Noreen Kidunduhu. I'm an advocate of the High Court of Kenya, and I am also a senior associate at Triple OK Law LLP in Nairobi, Kenya. Thank you, Wairimu, for the introduction and even for taking up this part of the session. I think we have enjoyed the entire session today and the brilliant recommendations and thoughts that the speakers have shared with us. I have seen the questions that have been coming through on the chat, and I can gladly report that most, if not all, of the concerns raised around the energy transition have been covered in our book by the various authors. For instance, my chapter discusses the recent oil and gas discoveries in the African continent and the improbability of African countries forgoing capitalizing those reserves and meeting their development aspirations for the sake of a clean energy transition. And so I offer blended strategies that African countries can adopt to enable them to capitalize their fossil fuel reserves, but at the same time constrain their carbon emissions. And so this book will be extremely helpful for anyone who's interested or involved in the African energy sector. And I just want to thank all of the astute authors who have graciously contributed to this project. Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Noreen, for your work in the editorial team. I can say as one of the writers that there was a bit of pressure in delivery in terms of the kind of quality that was required. I now call upon you, Mr. Tom Rukundo, to share also a bit about yourself, your experience in the editorial team, and your thoughts on the book.
Well, it has been my honor and privilege to work together with Dr. Victoria and Noreen. I happen to be the only gentleman on the team with these two very strong ladies, but it's my honor and privilege to work with the two of them. We have been blessed to have various other distinguished co-authors who have brought a lot of experience to this particular book and to the chapter. And we do look forward to having further collaborations. Myself, it is an honor again to see a number of the speakers we have had today. I happen to work with a number of them in the Petroleum Authority of Uganda and in developing Uganda's oil and gas space. And my particular book chapter is similar to Noreen's and similar to a number of others that have been presented. It's more along the lines of extractive-led development. And as you heard from the various presenters, it's going to be a unique scenario for resource-rich, low-income African countries to garner and utilize their oil and gas resources, especially in these trying times of reducing international demand, low oil prices, and also COVID-19, but also to ensure that they develop holistic and fundamental economic development for all their residents. And it will draw largely on the experience of Uganda and also from other international players such as Norway, the UK, and various other countries internationally. Again, it's my honor and privilege to see you all. Thank you.
All right, well, thank you very much, Tom. I think an interesting aspect that you will see from the presenters that will be speaking about their contributions is the diverse nature of the people who are contributing from various countries. Noreen is from Kenya, Tom Ayabara is from Uganda, and I will ask our next speaker, Mr. Kennedy Chege, all the way from South Africa. Karibu sana. Please tell us a little bit about yourself and your chapter.
All right. Asante sana, Ms. Wairimu Karanja. I'm actually originally from Kenya, but I've been in South Africa for the last 10 years, actually. I'm currently doing a PhD at the University of Cape Town, and I'm also coordinating our master's program. It's an LLM in the law of petroleum extraction and use. And I also work at a law firm by the name it's called ENS Africa in Cape Town. So I would like to start by thanking the organizers of the conference for this very, very informative conference. I'm sure everyone agrees with this. And then I would also like to thank the participants as well, and to Dr. Victoria Nalule also for kindly inviting me to participate in this book project. Thank you so much. So with our chapter deals with gender, technology, and the future of work in the energy and extractive sector. As the many presenters have said previously, is that the world is changing. We acknowledge that the world is changing, and it's mostly through the digital revolution, or the fourth industrial revolution, which is inevitable. Changing the way we live, the way we conduct businesses and interact with one another. And this chapter looks at how all the sectors, including the extractive sector, have been forced to adapt to these changes. As has also been discussed, the COVID-19 pandemic has sort of speeded up the process and made us aware that we need to implement the fourth industrial revolution. It shows the importance of digital readiness to allow businesses to continue running, especially now that most African countries have put measures in place for people to work remotely and so on. So mining has to continue, and we acknowledge this in that chapter. These changes will have an effect on women, specifically in the extractives, an industry that already has an insufficient number of women already. Also, with the current Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement, we also acknowledge that it will not be successful without the participation of women. For example, in the agricultural sector, which we know a lot of women are involved in this in terms of labor. They also explain why it is inevitable for us to involve women in this fourth industrial revolution, the digital revolution. So we address the influence of technology, the fourth industrial revolution, on the energy and extractive sector, which is the focus of our chapter, particularly the position of women amid this advent of the fourth industrial revolution. The oil and gas industry is a component of energy, and it accounts for the global energy why we focus mostly on oil and gas as part of energy. In the context of mining, companies are already embracing digitalization and automation. The digital technologies could be leveraged to achieve socioeconomic growth and development, specifically for women. For example, it provides avenues to upskill women and to address the gender disparity gap that currently exists. Emphasis is placed on artificial intelligence, AI, as a form of OIR that has the widest influence and application in the extractive sector so far. So my co-author, Ms. Alaka Lugonzo, will speak about the sector outlook and the public and private.
Thank you very much, Kennedy. And I now invite Alaka Lugonzo to take the floor. Alaka, please take your 2 minutes.
Okay, thank you very much, Wairimu. I'll just continue from where Kennedy left off. So our chapter basically looks at gender diversity and gender inclusivity as the world transitions into the fourth industrial revolution. Therefore, we must admit that there has been very many issues around the number of women in the workforce. And at this point that now post-COVID-19, many organizations will now implement long-term and permanent measures that allow people to work remotely. Therefore, that's how diversity plays into this. Where are the women going to be placed in this transition? Therefore, we look at the proposed solutions whereby we invite governments, private sectors, and NGOs to consider some of these things in terms of reskilling women, governments offering subsidies for women to go back to school, whether it's the beginning of their careers, whether it's mid-careers, whether it's ending of careers, and also the upsurge of STEM courses. And also, we also talked about how private sector can be involved, whereby they can invest in internet and mobile infrastructure, and therefore to help ease us into the transition into the fourth industrial revolution. Thank you very much. We hope that you'll be able to get access to the book and read more on the chapter. Thank you, Wairimu, for the opportunity.
All right, thank you, Alaka. My goodness, that was super fast. I'm very proud of you as one of my speakers. So with that, I now invite Ms. Catherine Nabukala to briefly also tell us about yourself and about your chapter in the book. Catherine.
Our chapter is about charcoal and its role in the energy sector of Africa. So, looking into energy, Africa's energy history, there's a lot of biomass being consumed around the continent, and Africa is actually the biggest producer user of biomass. And mostly we're focusing on charcoal, with using Uganda as an example. So with the development of electricity projects around Africa, including natural gas, renewable energy sources like solar, as somebody talked about in Mozambique. So there's a lot of renewable energy and the transition towards electric generation. However, our chapter is talking about the persistence of charcoal as a source of energy, especially in places that already have electricity. So our question is, is charcoal indispensable? And are Africans going to continue using charcoal even when electricity is available? So I think it's a very important question, because we need to figure out what we're doing to our forests, our natural resources. Is it worth it? Should we continue planning for charcoal? And can we have it at the rate we're having it without taking extra care in terms of reforestation? So we found out that charcoal is a very, actually it leads to mortality, and a lot of people that are using charcoal don't know it, because it's almost a slow death, right? When you use charcoal, the impacts of it don't happen in one day, but it's always cumulative, and that's why we don't seem to have enough education about it. So another aspect that we're looking at is that Africa is actually the biggest exporter of charcoal. That Africa is now exporting charcoal to Europe. We're exporting charcoal to Asia and different parts of the world. So because of informality, we're not benefiting from that aspect of energy trade. So these are some of the elements we're looking at in our chapter, and we're really looking into, the future of energy. Is charcoal going to be part of it or not?
All right. Thank you. Thank you very much, Catherine. That's a very interesting discussion, and we hope to read more in the book. I now hand over to Marvin Tumusime. If you are with us, Marvin, please tell us a bit more about the chapter in your book that you authored.
Yes, thank you so much for that. My name is Marvin Tumusime. I'm a consultant and program manager for New Energy Nexus in Uganda. And my chapter specifically looks at the transitioning to a low carbon economy and some of the renewable energy developments in Uganda, specifically in terms of the challenges and the opportunities. So what we've been doing with the chapter is looking at the hows and some of the needs and some of the constraints, and also looking at the strides that are happening right in the decentralized energy access in Uganda for household clean energy technologies like solar lanterns and briquettes and non-electric water filters. The chapter looks a bit at how some of this is being achieved, especially in terms of awareness. We go into a deep dive on some of the campaigns that have been done, like the Chusa Informed by You campaign that was done by the World Bank. We also look at how we have to leave no one behind, especially refugee communities. Uganda hosts one of the biggest refugee communities in the world. Then we also look at the affordability of the products that are being pushed out into the communities, and how communities are really adapting to these products in terms of ways that they can acquire them on terms that are favorable to them. We also look at product bundling as a way of maybe accelerating the access the access of decentralized energy products in the last mile. Looking at the needs, the chapter will also focus a bit on how funding, like most of this conference has been a lot on investments and the need for funding to certain sectors of the clean energy sector. So we're looking at the varied types of funding that are now available, like results-based funding, incubators and accelerators, and the impact that these initiatives have had on energy access, especially the decentralized energy access for household clean tech. There's also a deep dive on entrepreneurship, Uganda being one of the most entrepreneurial countries in the world. So the chapter also looks at how we can, how the energy sector can really tap into that to really encourage more entrepreneurs in the country to take on clean energy rather than just other sectors like agriculture, which are also very important, but also a deeper dive on the statistics for entrepreneurship in the country. Furthermore, we look at the constraints that are happening in the decentralized energy access sector, especially counterfeits, which are really prevalent on the market today, and how this is causing market distortions for decentralized energy access for home clean energy home goods. And the strides, looking at a quick dive into the policy documents like the BEST strategy, which was released by the Ministry of Energy, and also other policy documents that have been in this.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Marvin. I now turn to Dr. Mustafa El-Shazly. I hope I have pronounced that correctly. Please tell us a bit more about yourself and your chapter.
Thank you very much, Wermo. Let me catch the first opportunity to pass my greetings to all the esteemed panelists of today and the brilliant presentation. It was really valuable. And I'd like to pass my greetings to the editorial team and other colleagues in this important work. In fact, my name is Mustafa El-Shazly, and I work for Zaki Hashim and Partners law firm. It's an Egyptian-based law firm. And before joining Zaki Hashim and Partners, I worked in several companies, including the Egyptian Ministry of Petroleum and the Egyptian Petroleum Corporation. My contribution in the book focuses mainly on a case study from Egypt. And my chapter is titled Renewable Energy Development in Egypt and Transitioning to a Low Carbon Economy, Egyptian Law and Policy. As some of you may know, Egypt is the most populous country in North Africa and the Arab region. and this indeed led to a rapid increase in energy demand. It's a fact that Egypt depends principally on fossil fuels as a main source for primary energy in the country. Meanwhile, the country maintains high potential for renewable energy. To the 2015 Paris Agreement pertaining to climate change. For these reasons, Egypt adopts a comprehensive plan in order to widespread the deployment of renewable energy resources and paving the way for diversifying the energy mix in order to supply the domestic market with its needs from petroleum and energy resources. This fact was, and this strategy was supported by a comprehensive regulatory framework in the energy sector in order to deregulate the energy market and paving the way for attracting more investment in the energy sector and mainly in the renewable energy sector. My chapter will focus principally on illustrating the governance of the Egyptian energy sector and demonstrating the various schemes and structures for carrying out renewable energy projects in the country. And we will have a brief on incentives and guarantees presented to renewable energy investors under the Egyptian laws and introducing some initiatives launched by Egypt that promotes the transitioning to a low carbon economy and reducing carbon footprint. And we have actually in Egypt some success stories, like for instance, Bimban solar project, which is considered one of the most important solar.
I will ask you to wrap up so that we can have the next speaker.
Okay. And we shall demonstrate the challenges in the Egyptian renewable energy. Okay, thank you very much for this. And
all right.
The book shall be an added value to the people who are interested in the renewable energy sectors in Africa.
All right. Thank you very much, Mustafa. I'm sorry for the time limitation. We are just running out of time. I will carry on and speak a little bit about our chapter. My name is Wairimo, as mentioned, and I co-author an article in the book, a chapter with Ms. Ndutan Jenga, who is currently based in Ethiopia, and it is on the social license to operate on projects in East African countries in the oil and gas sector. We focus on 3 countries, Kenya, Uganda, and Tanzania, and our focus, our chapter has four key sections. The first one being an introduction to the social license to operate. And as you know, the social license to operate is an intangible, informal, and non-permanent right wielded by the community in projects. And so investors have to obtain that social license and then retain that social license through the course of the project. So we focus on the laws that provide for social license to operate, mostly environmental laws, which provide for public participation in the environmental impact assessment process. And we also look at other laws, including the petroleum laws and what they provide. We also look at private social license initiatives that have been carried on by companies, including, for instance, in Uganda, we have Tullow Oil that has its private corporate social responsibility or CSR measures that provide for social license to operate. We also discuss international development measures. For instance, international development agencies like the World Bank and the IFC have environmental health and safety guidelines that provide for social license to operate. And we also discuss the challenges relating to social license to operate, including the fact that laws are new and require a bit more work when it comes to implementation, including financial constraints by governments, and also including governance issues, whether in government or in the private sector, that affect the proper implementation of social license to operate. So there's quite a bit of reading and quite a bit of learning in that chapter on SLO and the central importance that it holds in oil and gas projects in Kenya, Uganda, and Tanzania. That is a brief background of what Nduta and I have to offer in our chapter. I have a message from Uche saying that he's now ready to present on their chapter in the book. Uche, I hand over the reins to you. Are you on?
Thank you, Warimu. Thank you to all the organizers of this conference and the editors of the book. My name is Michael Bonu. I'm an energy lawyer. I have here with me Mr. Yusuf Suleiman and Kester Oyibo is not here. We are the authors of the chapter, Nigeria's Electricity Laws and Off-Grid Renewable Energy Development, Giving with the right hand and taking back with the left. So the essence of the chapter really is about, we're talking about the essence of law as the driver for development of any sector. And of course, it includes the energy sector. And so we came from that background and reflected it in the context of Nigeria's electricity supply industry and the Nigeria's electricity law, which is the Electricity Power Sector Reform Act. So actually the essence of this act was to reform the electricity sector and help to diversify and liberalize the electricity sector. But we found out that there's an irony in this setting, in the regulatory setting, which seems to allow the state governments to embark on off-grid renewable energy, but at the same time withdraw that power from the state government. And so it led us to come to the conclusion that this regulatory setting in Nigeria, when it comes to electricity supply and regulation, tends to give with the right hand and take back with the left hand from the states. And so based on that, we propounded a theory of what we call the conflict of electricity laws. So among these laws, there are different forms of conflicts of electricity laws. We have the intra-conflict of law, where there are conflicting provisions within the regulatory setting. And we'll find that in the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria in what we call an intra-constitutional conflict. So we also found out that there's another type of a conflict of electricity law, which we call the inter-conflict of laws. We find that there are conflicts existing amongst the Constitution, the electricity law, and even some electricity subsidiary legislations, or what we call regulations. So there are conflicting provisions, among these laws and regulations, which have adverse effects on the development of off-grid renewable energies. And so we also talked about the conflict of laws vis-a-vis the doctrine of covering the field. And our argument in this respect is that with respect to energy development in Nigeria, that conflict, covering the field doctrine cannot be applied because the states have been specifically empowered to embark on off-grid renewable energy. So the federal government cannot come with a federal law to say, oh, we are taking over the sector, with the federal law. So that was our argument that cannot be allowed to stand. And so we looked at different approaches to actualizing rapid renewable energy development. We look at the legal perspective.
Uche, I'll need you to wrap up because
let me wrap up. So we talked about separate or integrated energy regulation, as one of the approaches. We analyzed that and also talked about cooperative federalism as an approach to ensuring the rapid development of the energy sector in Nigeria. So we thank you very much for this opportunity.
Thank you very much, Chair. I now invite Mr. Nicholas Muhereza. Nick, please take the floor and please take 2 minutes.
Okay, I want to thank the organizers of the virtual conference. I hope this is what COVID has done for us. Going forward, we should be having really great opportunities specifically to do with the technology, the global world we live in, vis-a-vis the energy sector that we are also trying to see how best we can improve, specifically here in Africa. My name is Muhereza Nicholas Woods. I'm a petroleum lawyer and policy analyst. I work for the government of Uganda, and I'm also a petroleum lecturer of law, specifically. So my contribution to the Energy Book on Africa is specifically on investment arbitration and alternative dispute resolution mechanisms. As you well understand, the energy sector is a capital-intensive based sector where very many billions of dollars or different currencies are invested in this particular sector, be it in renewable energy or even fossils. So most times we find there are challenges between the host countries and then the international oil companies, or energy companies for that matter. So my research, really what I'm trying to bring on table is how best can these two parties, that is the investors and the host countries, live without having long-standing contractual conflicts that end up hurting the sector. And my area of study is specifically Uganda. As you are well aware, I had some speaker talk about tallow oil. I think that is you, Iremu, talked about tallow oil. We have had tallow oil as one of the major exploration companies in Africa. They come in here, do exploration, and later sell their stakes to other players. But at the end of the day, we have had challenges with these similar situations where tallow oil, together with other players like Heritage, wanted to sell their stake to tallow, but then they were not ready to pay certain taxes to the government of Uganda. Where the matter started here in Uganda in our local courts, just like spelled out in the production sharing agreements, but then they were not happy with the Ugandan decisions, which started at the tax appeals tribunal up to the High Court, and then later went to London. So I found it interesting, even if you are to rate it with other countries or jurisdictions where you have had major oil corporations or energy corporations having problems with host countries. I found it important that can't we have a way forward? Can't we have a mechanism where both parties are actually very comfortable with resolving conflicts, both in the short run and the long run? And this will indeed help in ensuring that projects go on. For example, in Uganda, we are supposed to have a final investment decision. You saw the permanent secretary talking about it. But one of the major problems that has delayed production is actually conflicts. Yeah, I'm sorry, Karanja, but let me conclude. I just wanted to say that it is important that both investors and host countries have a mechanism of solving their conflicts without having to resort to long-term arbitration. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Nick. That is a very interesting analysis that I think will interest a lot of people in the book. All right, well, thank you, Victoria, for being on the line, because I am actually calling upon you as our last speaker. I'm very glad that all speakers, all contributors were able to speak. If you can just wrap it up for us in terms of what we expect to see in the book, the coverage that we see, and what you see are the future prospects. You introduced the whole element of energy progression. So please wrap this up for us.
Thank you very much, Wairemo. As the lead editor of this book, I'm really privileged to be working with these brilliant minds from different parts of Africa who are very enthusiastic about the sector. So this is a book that will be addressing many issues, including local content. I've seen people raising questions with respect to local content, including the need to utilize the fossil fuels we have, but not forgetting the climate change challenges we face on the continent. So definitely we'll be addressing issues to do with renewables. And for this first time, we have contributors who are coming up with concepts, who are coming up with ways to redefine how we view and see the African energy sector. So this is a book which is just giving general knowledge, but we're also analytical. So expect new concepts in each book, because all the contributors are very bold, they're very enthusiastic, and they really want to make sure that African countries benefit from their resources. I've seen many people asking how they'll be getting a copy of the book. I have all your emails, so I'll keep updating you once the book is out. And it's going to be an open access book, so you can download for free. We're not benefiting from it, but we have to make sure that we do guide the policymakers on the continent so that they utilize all the energy resources they have. And I'll give the closing remarks for the conference. Thank you all of you who have stayed with us for over 3 hours. And this has been a very successful e-conference. We had over 900 people register, but I think due to internet connections, over 300 logged in. Thank you very much to our speakers, our panelists, our moderators, and also the organizers of this conference, including the Extractive Hub and also the African Energy and Mining Minerals Initiative. Thank you all, and stay tuned. So this is the end of the conference. If you have any questions, you all have my email address. Do reach out. I'll be sharing with you all the slides, the important research we've been doing, and we shall keep you updated. And this is not the last event we're holding. We have more events coming up. So stay tuned.